at Power BI DAX formulas. Before this class starts, kindly use the comment section to confirm if you can see the screen as well as if you can clearly hear my voice. I will appreciate your feedback in the comment section. If you want to grab the files that I'm going to be using in this class, please check the link in the description of this video. And I will also advise that in this live class, I may go a little bit faster while demonstrating some of the functions, but don't worry, relax and watch what is happening on the screen, because even after the live class ends, the video will be available for replay where you can rewind, pause, or even slow down the playing speed as you practice. Alright, so what does DAX mean? DAX is an abbreviation of Data Analysis Expressions. This is a formula expression language that is used in both Power BI and Power Pivot in Excel to perform advanced calculations and queries on data in related tables and columns inside tabular data models. It's very important for anyone who is in the roles of a data analyst or a Power BI developer to know and master how to use DAX efficiently and effectively. It doesn't matter which platform you might be using DAX in. It could be inside Power BI, or it could be inside Excel's Power Pivot, or it could be any other data analysis services. On today's agenda, we shall start with installing Power BI in case you do not have it in your system. It's completely free to download. I will show you how to do that. Number two, we shall introduce ourselves to DAX functions, and we shall go through and try to use most of the functions if time allows, including the aggregate DAX functions, date and time intelligence DAX functions, logical DAX functions, text data manipulation functions, filter DAX functions, and our relationship DAX functions like related table, and so much more. Before we get started, it's very important to understand some of the operators, because in DAX we use both functions and operators, and here is a list of some of the operators that you'll need while working with DAX formulas. And some of these operators, as you can see, are similar to what we use in Excel, with slight differences in some of them, like the logical operators. How do we get and install Power BI in case you do not have it? And the first method, of course, we shall use the Microsoft Office Store app that is already available in your operating system, or you can actually directly grab it from the official Microsoft website. I've shared the link in the description of this video for the official Microsoft website where you can download Power BI for free. To get Power BI installed in your system, what you'll do is you'll head over to the search area of your operating system and punch in here keyword, you say store. So when you search for this Microsoft Store, it will be the first option here. Just tap on it. And when the Microsoft Office Store launches, you'll come in here in the search area and search for Power BI. Punch in here Power BI. As soon as you start typing, you'll see the options here. Power BI Desktop, this is the app we are interested in. Tap in here once. And what you need to do here is to click this particular word here, install. And once the installation is done, you'll see the shortcut key on your keyboard here that confirms that you have installed Power BI. For me, I've already installed the system. The second method is to head over to the official Microsoft website. And once you're here on this page, just come in here and select the language of your choice and click the download button. I've shared the link in the description of this video where you can actually download the Power BI tool absolutely for free. Alright, now that we have finished installing Power BI in our computer, let us go ahead and open this tool, load in some data, and start writing some DAX formulas. I'll go ahead and locate where Power BI is on my desktop right here. I'll double click and open the tool. When the Power BI tool opens, the first thing that you'll see is this start screen right here. What we can do for now, we can actually close this start screen, go ahead and save our project. What I will do is come over to the file menu, save as. I can locate in location where I can actually save our project. For this demonstration purposes, I'll save mine on the desktop and I'll call this one Power BI Training. Once your project gets saved, you'll see the file name appearing on top of your ribbon. Now let us bring in some data. The data set that I'm going to be using is sitting in an Excel file. So what I can do, I can either use this option here to bring in the data, or I can come and click on the Get Data option here. This will launch the Get Data dialog box, and this shows me all some of the areas where I can pick the data. Mine is in an Excel file. I'll stick to the Excel workbook option and say Connect. This dialog box will launch, and now what I need to do is to locate the folder where my file is. Mine is right here, the datasets folder, and it's called the orders. So just tap on this file and say Open. When the navigator dialog box launches, and you can see it has actually looked into the file and it has found out that we have a worksheet called orders, and we also have a table called orders table. So it's better to bring in the orders table because we know that the tables give us that dynamic structured ranges. So I'll make sure that I place a check mark on the table option like so. And because this data looks a little bit clean, I may not need to do a lot of transformations. So I'll just go ahead and load it directly into the data model. So just tap on the load button like so. This will bring our data into the Power BI data model. All right, now that the data set is sitting inside our Power BI, as you can see in the orders table right here, you can see the number of columns that are in that particular table. For now, if I want to look at this data set that I've just brought into the Power BI tool, I can come over to the table view right here. You can clearly see that this is the data set that we have just brought into our Power BI tool. And of course, the first thing that we shall do is to understand the data set. We can see we have the order date, we also have the customer ID, we have the order ID, we have the customer names, we have the customer addresses, we also have the products that they ordered, the units that we sold to them. Now, assuming that this is the data set that is before you, and the first task that you need to complete is to calculate the total revenue. There are a couple of approaches we can use here. I will show you both using a calculated column along with the SUM DAX function, as well as the shorter method of using the SUMX DAX formula. The first approach is to start with creating a calculated column, which will simply be the units sold multiplied by the unit price. So I'll come and click on this table right here, right mouse click, and then come in here and choose new column. This will insert the column as you can see, but as of now you can see there is an error simply because we haven't written the formula here. What I will do, I'll just zoom in into this formula bar so that you can see what I'm punching here. The column name, I'll come and rename this one to revenue, and then I'll say this will equal to, and then I can start punching in the column that I'm interested in. I'm interested in using the unit sold. Immediately I start punching in, because of IntelliSense, you can see the columns that are in this table will pop up automatically. I'm interested in multiplying the unit price or the units sold into the units price. So this is the formula that we need. Now I'll just hit enter key on the keyboard, and there you go. For us to get the total revenue, we need to create a measure that will add up or total up all these values inside the revenue column in one go. So to do that, I'll head over to the report view tab right here, and what I will do is I'll actually insert a card here so that you can see this summation or this particular measure. I'll come back to the table, right mouse click, and then I'll say new measure. I'll expand in a little inside this formula bar so that you can see what I'm typing here, and I call this measure total revenue, which will simply equal to the sum. I'll open the sum function. This will be the sum of which particular column? The column that we have just created here, called the revenue column. I'll just tap this particular column right there, close the parenthesis, and hit enter key on the keyboard. Once I do that, this particular measure will become available right here. Now, if I want to look at the total revenue, I'll just click in this card right here and make sure that I can pick my total revenue measure right here. Place a check mark like that, and there you go. You can see the total revenue will be populated right here. Now, what is the difference between a measure that we have just created right here and a calculated column that we created a few moments back. The only difference is that, let me just go back to the table view so that I can demonstrate the difference. When we created a calculated column, you can see it added another record, another individual column onto this table, which means that this table is now expanding and growing. But the measure that we have just created here that is giving us our total revenue is not sitting anywhere in this table. So it does not grow this table. And of course, as you keep adding on these other columns, the file or the physical file will expand in terms of the size, and this will impact on the performance of the entire model. And that is a very huge difference between creating a measure and a calculated column. We could achieve the same result using a DAX aggregate function called the SUMX. Let me show you how to create this measure that will yield the same results without creating a new column. So what I will do, I'll come back here to the report view and insert another card right here. So let me just make sure I click outside and create another card. Now in here, I'll come back to the table, right mouse click, create a new measure. I rename this measure to total revenue 2, and this will simply equals to, I'll open the SUMX function this time, and the SUMX function requires that you give it a table. I'll still work within the orders table, and our expression, of course, will be the units sold. Let me just punch in here, units sold multiplied by the unit price. Okay, I close off my brackets here for the SUMX function, and when I hit enter key on the keyboard, definitely this second measure will be created right here. Now let me just introduce that particular total revenue in this card here. I'll make sure that it is clicked and then come in and place a check mark on the total revenue measure here, like so. You can see this one will still give us the same aggregate total revenue value. This one we have achieved it using a calculated column with the SUM function, but this one we have not created any calculated column. We've just used the SUMX function. I believe you pick an idea on which one you should be using. To me, I find the SUMX function doing it a little bit faster. The second question that we may need to answer here is how many orders were placed in total. To answer this question, we need an aggregate DAX function called count, which will count all the records in the table, and this is how we write this particular measure. So I'll come back to the table like so, and right mouse click, create a new measure. So I'll call this measure total number of orders, and this will simply equals to, I open the count function. So I'll pick any of the columns that I will need to use in this particular count. Maybe I can count the order ID column. So I'll just select this column right here and close parentheses or brackets and hit enter key on the keyboard. For us to look at the total transactions, what I will do, I'll make sure that I insert another card. I'll come in here, click on the card. This will give me another card right here. Let me just expand it. And then what I need to do is to come over to my measures here and tap on the total number of orders. Once I place this check mark, you can see the total number of transactions or orders that we have in this particular data set that we have loaded in here. So what does the count function do? It simply uses any of these columns and counts each individual cell address that has a value in it. So we assume that this particular entire table has over 700 orders. Similarly, we can also use another aggregate function called the average to calculate the average sales amount. And this is how we can do that. I'll make sure that I click outside of these cards right here. Come back to my table, just tap on it, right mouse click, and then we say new measure. So I'll rename this measure to something like average sales amount, which will simply equals to, I'll open the average function, and this time I'm going to be using my revenue column right here, close parenthesis, and hit enter key on the keyboard. If I want to see this particular average value, I'll actually come in here and pick a card. I'll just insert a new card and bring it right here, expand it a little bit so that you can see the number, and come over to my measures here and pick the average sales amount measure right here. Just place a check mark, and there you go. You can see 6.81 million is our average value when you actually come over and check this particular revenue column right there. Another question that we may ask here is how many total number of products were ordered in this entire order list. So what we simply need to count are the unique product names inside this particular product column, and therefore we shall need to do a distinct count. How do we do that? What I'll do, I'll come back to the table right here, right mouse click, we add in another measure here. I rename this measure to something like number of products, which will simply equal to, I'll open the distinct count function, which is right here. We need to count how many products. Now I need to make sure that I use the product column. Out of all these columns, I'll make sure that I come for this column right here, close brackets, and hit enter key on the keyboard. This measure, of course, will be added onto our data model. If I want to see the number that this particular measure is yielding, I'll come back to the report view and create another card here. And for this card, I'll make sure that I come and tap on my new measure that I've just created, total number of products right here. So let me place a check mark like so, and there you go. You can see there is a total number of 7 products that were ordered when you look at this particular raw data. But before we actually accept this particular count of the number of products, let us examine if this particular measure is giving us the correct results. I'll head back to the table view and come over into my product column here. Let me just activate or just use my filters here. I activate my filters. This should give me all the unique products here. Let us count and see if they are actually 7. You see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These products are actually 6, but because we have some blank rows in this data set, they have also been considered as a record on their own, and that's why you're seeing this particular measure is actually returning a 7. Now there's another function that you can use that will eliminate any possible blank rows that you may have in your data. So let us come over to our report view and create another measure right here. I'll call this one number of products 2, and this one will simply equal to, this time I will use the distinct count no blank function right here, and I will still use my product column like so, and now I can close the distinct count no blank function, hit enter key on the keyboard. So this measure will be added. We have just called this one number of products 2. Now I can also add another card here so that you can see the number. I'll just bring it right here, and let us tap the number of products 2 like so, and there you go. Six as the number of products, yet products. There's also another function called distinct. What this one does is that when you use in your model with only the list of unique items of any column that you choose. So let us create a new table and use the distinct function and check the results right here. What I will do is I'll come back to this particular table right here and then use this option here, new table. I'll just call this table products table, which in I'll just use my products column, which is right here. And when I close this particular function and hit enter key on the keyboard, what this one does is that it will create a one column unique table of values from the product column. Let us actually come over here and double check this table. This table has been created right here. When I actually, our unique product has been added here, but again, you can see the blank rows have also been added here. Now you can go ahead and implement filters here so that you can eliminate all the blank rows. Okay. Now those are some of the aggregate DAX functions that you can work with inside Power BI. Now let us move forward and look at some of the logical DAX functions like the if, the or, and the and functions. Assuming that we wanted to scan this entire table, we shall go back to our orders table. For example, we'd like to categorize our transactions, and the condition here is that any transaction whose units sold are greater than 2,000 is categorized as a large transaction, and the rest that do not meet that condition are categorized as medium. How do we write that if logical statement inside Power BI? Of course, I'll come back here and right mouse click on my table. This time I will add a new column like so, and this column that I'm adding, I'll call this one category 1, and this will simply equals to, I'll open the if function, and we're going to be asking this question inside our logical test. I will ask, are the units sold if they are greater than 2,000, comma, result if true? Of course, we would like to print or to categorize that transaction as large. Otherwise, we would like to categorize that transaction as medium. I can close my double quotes, close parenthesis, and hit enter key on the keyboard. What this one does is that it will create this particular column, and you can see each individual transaction has been categorized for all those transactions whose units sold are greater than 2,000. You can see they have been given this category here. They are large transactions, and all these other transactions that are below 2,000, they are medium transactions. So that's how you can basically write an if statement inside our Power BI. How about the and function? So let us try another categorization here. I'll come back to my table, right mouse click, and then create another column. I'll call this column category 2, and this will simply equals, I need to use the and function here because I want to test two conditions here. I want to check whether the product is equal to mango and the units sold are greater than 2,500, and would like to categorize those as exceptional transactions, and the rest of the transactions we shall just return a blank. So I'll open the and function. The limitation with the and function inside DAX is that it is only limited to 2 logical tests, but I will show you shortly how we can implement more than 2 logical tests inside DAX. For now, let us demonstrate how to use the and function. Okay, I will ask the first logical test, is the products column equal to mango, like so. The second logical test would like to ask, are the units sold greater than 2,500? Those are the 2 logical questions. I'll close brackets right here. When I hit enter key on the keyboard, of course, this one will return either a true or a false if the condition is met. Now, if you want to customize the values of false and trues, we can actually introduce the if function. I'll come back to this particular measure and introduce the if function at the beginning, and this entire logical test that we have asked will serve as our logical test inside the if, and I'll just come at the end and say comma, result if true. I want to print exceptional, otherwise I want to print nothing. I'll close brackets and hit enter key on the keyboard. We are still getting an error here. Maybe this is because of these brackets that I've added. I'll just remove the last bracket and hit enter key one more time. Yes, I think the problem is these particular double quotes that we have added right here. So I'll just remove these double quotes and enter on the keyboard. And there you go. You can see all those transactions who have met this particular condition. They have this particular categorization, exceptional, and the rest have returned blanks. Now, if we need to evaluate more than 2 logical tests, what do? We introduce an operator, the 2 ampersands that I did show you at the beginning of this class, to create more logical tests inside our if, and, or all logical functions. Let us apply this with an example. And what we need to check here is we want to check if the product equals to mango and the units sold if they are less than 2,000, and also if the revenue is less than 10 million. So to do that, I'll come back to my table and right mouse click. I'll go for new column. Inside this new column, I rename this one to category 3. And this one will simply equals to, I'll open the if function. And for our logical tests, I will start asking these questions. Let us start with the products column. Are you equal to mango? And because I'm going to be asking more than 2 logical questions, I will introduce my 2 ampersands like so. And now the second question is, are the units sold less than 2,000? I will introduce another 2 ampersands like so. And now we need to ask, is the revenue less than 10 million? So I'll come here and say, are you less than 10 million? Comma, result if true. Of course, we want to print this message here. We want to print a message, exceptional, comma, otherwise blank. I'll close brackets and hit enter key on the keyboard. And there you go. You can see all these particular transactions that meet that particular condition have been categorized with this particular keyword right there that we supplied, but I can see the E here has an issue. What I'll do, I will just print in the correct E right there and hit enter key on the keyboard so that I can correct the spelling here. Now, all these logical functions that you're seeing inside the DAX are similar to the ones that we write inside Excel. When you check the all function, when you check the and function, they are exactly the same, only that if you want to do, or if you want to evaluate more than 2 logical tests, you need to introduce the 2 ampersands if you're using the and if you're doing an all, then you will introduce what we call the double pipe characters. So instead of, the 2 ampersands, I can change this one to the double pipe characters like so. So this one will mean I'm just using the all function like so. So when I hit enter key on the keyboard, you can see this will change the results right here, and you can see almost every single record here is exceptional. What I'll do is to reinstate my 2 ampersands like so, and I will demonstrate the all function on its own with another criteria. But feel free to go ahead and test some of these logical functions that we might not get time to demonstrate in this class. All right, for now, let us move forward and look at some of the text data manipulation DAX functions. These are very simple, similar to how we use them inside Microsoft with a slight difference. But let us look at some of the examples, starting off with the proper function. Assuming that we'd like to convert all our products from, small letters to capital letters, we could do that. I'll come back to this table, right mouse click, I'll add another column, and now I'll need to use upper function here. So when this particular column opens here, I'll rename this one to capital letters, and this one will simply equals to, I open the upper function, and in the upper function I will supply only one argument. This time inside the DAX we are working with columns, So I'm interested in working with the products column, like so, and close parenthesis, hit enter key on the keyboard. You'll see that this column will be added automatically, and all the product names have now been converted into all capital letters. The only issue is that inside DAX we do not have the proper function like we do inside Microsoft Excel, but you can still do the lower function here. Let us come back and right mouse click, add a new column. For this one, I'll call it small letters, and this will simply equals to lower, and then I'll give my column that I've just created right here called capital letters, and then close parenthesis, hit enter key on the keyboard. This will now be converted into small letters. Now the only function we don't have here is the proper function. What you can do is a workaround inside your Power Query. You can actually go back and edit this query and change those values from there. All right, now you might be asking yourself, do we have more text functions like concatenate, left, right, mid, replace, substitute, and so many other functions that you are used to in Excel? Yes, we do. Let us move forward and look at some of more text functions examples here in Power BI. But of course, please, if you are enjoying this particular class, let me know in the comment section. I have a colleague on the sides who is actually taking care of all the questions that you might be asking right there, because we do not want to interrupt this particular live session so much. That's why I've dedicated someone to handle all your questions that you might have in the chat. For now, let's move forward and look at more examples to do with text functions. Suppose you wanted to concatenate text in Power BI. How do you do that? I'll come over to this table, right mouse click, and let us add another column right here. I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit inside my formula bar right here so that you can see what I'm typing. I will rename this column to something like, maybe I'll just call this one combined text. And of course, what I want to do here is to combine my customer ID with the product name. So I'll say equals, I open the concatenate function. Now our concatenate function requires only 2 arguments, so you cannot combine more than 2 text strings inside this concatenate function. But of course, I'll show you how to use the ampersand to concatenate more than 2 text strings. Of course, for this one, the first example, I will actually concatenate my customer ID. So I'll start punching in here ID. I'll go for customer ID, like so, comma, and the second text that I want to combine here is the product name. Let me just punch in here product. I'll go back to the orders table, product column, and I can close the concatenate function from here. When I hit enter key, of course, this column will be created, it will be added onto my table, and you can see this particular text string for the order ID and the product name have been combined together. But of course, the problem is that you can see there is no any space that is separating between the order ID and the product itself. And if you need to introduce that, of course, the concatenate function alone cannot help you. You need the ampersand this time. So what I will do, I'll come back to this particular column and we edit our concatenate function here. Instead of, using the concatenate function, I'll use the ampersand instead so that I can introduce some other characters inside this concatenation. So I'll get rid of this particular function like so. And what I will do immediately after the order ID, I'll close parenthesis right here. And in between here, I will introduce the ampersand like so. And because I'm interested in introducing another character in between, it could be a space, it could be a hyphen, whichever character that you may want to introduce, I'll open double quotes. Maybe let me just do a hyphen like so. And then I'll open another ampersand. I'll get rid of this comma and open parenthesis for this argument right there. Now, when I hit enter key on the keyboard, check what happens to our column here. This hyphen will be introduced in between, separating the order ID and the product itself. Maybe we would like to concatenate more than 2 columns. Let us work out an example right here. I'll actually come back to my table, right mouse click, new column. Let us this time combine our order ID with the customer ID as well as the product itself. So I'll come back here and call this one combined 3 columns. And this will equal to, I'll open parenthesis, and in between here, I'll use my order ID. I'll start punching in ID here so that I can locate the order ID column very fast. I close brackets. I'll introduce the ampersand in here. For the second text that we need to bring in our customer ID. So I'll actually punch in here ID, but this time go for the customer ID column, close parenthesis, introduce our ampersand, and now let us bring in our product name, like so. When I close brackets and hit enter key on the keyboard, this will combine all those 3 columns together to give us this particular combined text string. But of course, you can see we are lacking some text separators like a space, a hyphen, or something. Let us reintroduce this. So immediately after the order's ID, I will introduce a hyphen. I open brackets, hyphen, and then I'll introduce another ampersand in here. And also after our customer ID, I will introduce another hyphen in here and introduce another ampersand. Now when I actually hit enter key on the keyboard at this moment, let me check what happens. You can now clearly see that all these 3 text strings that we combined are now separated with a hyphen in between. Similarly, we can use other text functions like the left, the right, and the mid, the same way how we use them inside Excel. Maybe I'll demonstrate some examples here, how to use the left, the right, and the mid. Let us create another column here, right mouse click, new column. And assuming maybe here we want to extract the first 2 characters of the product name, this will simply equals to, I will open the left function like so. And now in between here, I will give that text that I'm interested in. I'll work with the product column, definitely. And for the number of characters argument, I'm interested in only 2. I'll close the left function from here. And when I hit enter key on the keyboard, this column will be added onto our table. And you can see it has only extracted the first 2 characters of our product. Maybe I can change, instead of looking at the product, I can extract from the customer names. I'll punch in here customer like so. Hit enter key on the keyboard. Now you can see this one will extract only the first 2 characters of individual customer names. Similarly, we can do the right function. So I can change this one here. Instead of using the left, I will change this one to right. Let's also extract the last 2 characters. Hit enter key on the keyboard. You can see these 2 characters will be returned in this particular column right here. Similarly, we can also use the mid function. So I'll come in here and introduce the mid instead. And because the mid has 1 extra argument, it requires the starting position. I'll give the text, and for the starting position, of course, I want to start from the second position, comma, and the number of characters, I'm interested in only 3. I can now hit enter key on the keyboard, and there you go. Of course, looking at the customer name right there, we have extracted the 3 characters starting from the middle of starting from the second character. All right, now let us go back to the comment section so that we can check if there are some serious questions that we need to answer. But again, I would like to thank you for sticking around up to this time. Thanks very much. Please like this particular class. You can share this particular class with another colleague who might be interested in learning more about DAX functions. For now, let's head over back to the presentation and check what we have so far covered in this class. We have so far introduced ourselves to the aggregate DAX functions like the sum, the count, average, distinct, and SUMX. We also looked at the DAX logical functions like the if, the and the all. And we also looked at the text data manipulation DAX functions like the upper, lower, concatenate, left, right, and the mid. Now, what should we be covering in our next Power BI class? We shall introduce ourselves to the date and time intelligence function like the calendar, calendar auto, date, date diff, and so much more. We also introduce ourselves to the filter DAX functions like calculate and all, as well as the relationship DAX functions like related and related table, and so much more. Now, after we conclude a series of classes introducing ourselves to DAX calculations and DAX functions, we shall come back here and start doing data analysis inside Power BI. And our first assignment will be designing a dashboard report inside Power BI using some of the DAX functions, as well as other techniques and so many other data analysis tools inside Power BI. Let's meet in our next class. Otherwise, for now, it's a good night. Bye-bye.